was the Joshua tree. And they said that, how important this tree was and how unique it was, and it was easily to be recognized. And the guy thought, well, wow, that really is. And he says, but I've never seen one in my neighborhood. And so he takes the book out, and he lives in a cul-de-sac, and he starts to walk out. Lo and behold, to his shock, and David, do you have that picture that you can put up there of the Joshua tree? Here's this Joshua tree, and there was 5 in his little cul-de-sac that he'd never noticed before in his life. Been living there for over 10 years, going in and out every day, and they were just part of the landscape to him. Thank you, David. And so the question is how many of us as Albertans this is the landscape, this is the predicament we're in, and have never thought of changing or looking for something new, or if there's something that we could or should be doing. I've given the analogy several times that we're all floating down the river of life. Things are blissful, things are wonderful, the sun's shining, feel good, we're full, we've eaten. And then we all of a sudden start to realize that, wow, we look to the right, we look to the left, there's straight up cliffs, there's no beaches, there's no place to pull over. And then we realize that, wow, we're really traveling fast now. This is really picked up. We're not just floating along. And then all of a sudden we hear the sound of a waterfall. It's too late. When you can hear the waterfall and the cliffs are straight up beside you, it's too late to try and do something. And I feel that we're approaching that moment of no return. I spoke, a couple of weeks ago about a letter that was put out. We're past the point of no return, and many people feel that way, but yet perhaps they're the Joshua tree syndrome, and they don't know that there's an option. They just think, well, we just got to ride this out and we'll hope for the best, rather than get out and portage and get away from this. The other analogy that I've given many times, and I feel is very relevant, is the Titanic. We've already hit the iceberg. We're trillions of dollars in debt. We just had another election where the people have said, yes, we want to be part of the world global reset. We want to be part of the socialism. We want government to look after us. When I say we, I'm talking that the minority who elected a minority government who's going to rule again with a majority, who in his speech last night, said one of the most important things is that we've got to get moving fast on climate action. And again, all of the problems that's causing us with the taxes on our energy, the 2 most important things for a free and prosperous society to me is the price that you pay for food and the price that you pay for energy. And in those countries where food is scarce, quality of life is not good. The quality of life is going down exponentially as the cost of energy and our food goes up, and we need to do something about it. And that's what the Wild Rose Independence Party and you, me, and every other Albertan out there who's aware of it are going to do something. David, let's have one other old metaphor. Let's put up the little pot there. How many times have we heard that old story that you can boil a frog to death if you just raise the temperature slowly? Thanks, David. That's really the situation that we're in. This is even as fast as things have been moving, it's still been generally very slow for most people, and they realize they shrug their shoulders. What can we do? What should we do? And it's just, let's go along and get along. And that isn't good enough. Like I say, the river of life, the waterfall's coming, the temperature in the pot is becoming lethal. That we have to do something. I really feel that this election in 2023, if we make it till then, will be our last chance for a peaceful and democratic way out of this mess. And that's what our goal is. It's to grow for a few minutes. So disturbing to me to see the situation that we're in and the number of healthcare frontline workers that I've spoken with in the last couple of weeks and the crisis that we're in. I was speaking to an emergency room doctor, ICU doctor, and he has lost 30 of his staff over the past 6 months. He just had a nurse leave last week at the end of her shift for the night shift. She was going off and she was cleaning out her locker, and he asked, what are you doing? She says, I'm done. One of your colleagues just told me that I was a waste of skin because I haven't been vaccinated. And she says, I'm done. I won't be coming back. And are you going to say to anybody? Nope. Just when they show up next time, I'm done. This is what's happening. They've created this anger, this fear, this anxiety amongst our frontline healthcare workers, and it's terrible. When we've had 2 years to have educated nurses for ICU for ICU situations, they've done nothing. We've spent billions of dollars, and as I've said before, it's just a dog chasing its tail. We should have been having and paying nurses to come in and be trained for ICU positions. I talked to a nurse just last night, and she just says that I've been working in pediatrics. They want me to come into the ICU. I'm not prepared for it. There's no reason why they didn't offer these people and pay them through the summer to get educated. Please come and get accredited, get familiar again. I talked to another doctor. He says, you know, in the last pandemic, and I forgot to ask him whether that was 2008 or 2012 or 2003, you know, whether it was the VARS or the swine flu or the COVID, MARS. Again, I was just trying to absorb all the information that he was sharing with me. But he says, Paul, we had 2,500 ventilators back then. Where have they all gone? And this adds credence to those people who said this is a pandemic. We know that federally, we had warehouses full of personal protection equipment that was all shipped out and got rid of just before the pandemic hit us, before the crisis. And again, where are these ventilators? 20 even handle the regular flu. We've known this for 20 years. I've had George Porter on here before, EMT. He is for 15 years tried to switch the policy that when an ambulance shows up at a hospital, the hospital is responsible for those patients. We just have one crisis created after another because of, in my opinion, extreme mismanagement, if not total mismanagement. And it's wrong, and nobody's being held accountable. But the answers are out there, but we need to know where they are and how we get there. And I just, again, want to say that I'm just so proud of the 20% of Albertans that have responded to polls to let Jason Kenney know that there is another side of this issue. People do want their freedom. We don't want a cradle to grave government that's telling us how and where and what to do to run our lives, to shut down or open our businesses. I just can't believe that they somehow think that by putting on a mask and shutting down small businesses and forcing people to now show their papers to get into facilities, that somehow this is going to control a virus. It doesn't do it. We've seen it around the world. It doesn't happen. Another thing that we've done to create the crisis in our healthcare and the shortage is if somebody tests positive, anybody who came in contact with them off for 14 days, putting huge pressure on those that were left behind. All of these things are very disturbing and upsetting. And again, it's actually causing, you know, fear and anxiety, when what our leadership should be doing is saying, you know what, we're educating more frontline workers. We're getting people prepared and educated for the ICU. We're increasing the number of beds. Historically, we've only had 214, but we've doubled that. We've quadrupled that. There's no reason in the last 2 years that we didn't do that, unless you have nefarious goals, is my concern. Again, last night listening to our prime minister and to say that people are upset and just want to get back to their lives. They don't want to talk politics and they don't want to talk elections. Well, duh, we didn't want that 35 days ago. And again, I just feel like for many people, they were sucker punched. And so I want to address that problem again as well, because this is going to be a huge issue and is a concerning issue everywhere I go. The number one question they ask is, well, I can't afford to split the vote. I don't want to throw away my vote for somebody who can't win. I want each and every wild roser to understand so that they can share with other people that whoever we vote for, that's the message that we send to Ottawa or to Edmonton. And so when we're voting out of fear, when we're voting out of strategy, and saying, well, this is what I really believe. I know this is what we need to do, but I don't think that that's going to win. So therefore, I'm going to vote for the best or the least of two evils. That's the message that we send. That's the government that we get. That old adage, be careful what you ask for, um, is relevant here. Be careful what you vote for, because that's the message that you're sending. If you vote for UPC, you're voting for what we have. If you're voting for NDP, you're voting for their plan to shut down the pandemic, to continue the fear mongering, to say that we need to segregate people. It's just astounding. And so the most important thing that we can do is when we're talking to our friends, our family, our colleagues, is to tell people to vote for what we need, vote for what we believe in, because we won't get it if we're asking or looking at the least of two evils. And again, many people, if you're looking at the polls and following where we are provincially, and they say, oh, we can't split the vote on the right, there isn't anyone else on the right beside the Wild Rose. What you're doing is splitting the vote between socialism, between big government, between rules and regulations, between overtaxation. Um, you're voting for Ottawa. The question is, are you going to vote for Alberta and put Albertans first and the people and the businesses? Or are you going to vote for Ottawa and that they continue to hold their hand over us or around our neck and telling us what we can and can't do? Healthcare transfers, equalization, environmental conditions that are ridiculous. They're just such total hypocrites on these things. And to listen to our prime minister last night say that we need to speed up on the climate action, that's what Canadians want. Boy, even if that's what they want, it's like asking a child, well, do you want candy, a chocolate bar, or do you want to sit down and have supper? Don't ask questions that you're going to get the wrong answer to, because you haven't informed people to make a proper decision, or worse than that, you're bribing them. And we've seen a lot of bribing and a lot of coercion in the last 6 months. Oh, where did I put my water? Bring it in here. Anyways, we're in an opportunistic time right now to share our message. People are upset. People want to see a future. And I don't know how many of you have seen our new pamphlets that we have out. We picked them up here. There we go. There's two sides to them. One side talks about the things that we say no to, and the other one's talking about things that we're saying yes, and they're green. But we've got 100,000 of these. They're being distributed today. I'll be delivering some out to Coaldale and Lethbridge after my broadcast today. But we need volunteers, and go to our website, wildrosenation.com, and volunteer to help hand these out in your area, or maybe in the neighboring town if you live in rural Alberta and you finished yours. I talked last week, and again, we can certainly show people if they're interested or needing to, that the province is broken down into constituency associations. Inside those constituency associations, they have polls. Any of you who went out and voted, you know what poll you're in or what riding you're in. And we're going to keep track. Different CAs have been ordering their maps from Election Alberta, the big 32 by 60, I believe, or 48, 32 by 48 inches. And they're broke down into the polls. And then we can go on the website. We can look at those polls that people have been voting with the high propensity for conservatism. And if you're in a poll where 50 or 60% of the people voted, and they voted for a conservative, that's a good place to start dropping these. Don't go to a poll where 15 or 20% of the people voted, and lo and behold, they voted for socialism. That's not the place where we want to put out our first 100,000 brochures. We also need people who aren't able to go door to door and hand out these brochures, that you can, again, donate $10 or $20 and request a sign. Those lawn signs are being delivered to 7 major areas in the province. The more remote you are, the tougher it'll be to get you a sign. But we need the donations, and we're hoping from this first purchase that we'll have enough to order 200,000 brochures and 1,000 lawn signs. But this is the best way I know to get our message out. And again, if you put the lawn sign up and you've left it for 2 weeks, let's not make it like a Joshua tree that's been there for 10 years. Take it down for the weekend, maybe take it down for 4 or 5 days, and then pop it up again. There's always something new that triggers us. I had to almost giggle at myself here today. Well, I don't know. It's embarrassing, I guess, but our mind really does see what we're accustomed to or what we're thinking and concentrating on. I put out my tweet today that it's going to start tonight at 6 o'clock because David is busy helping CAs at 7 o'clock on how to use the web page and things. And so I says, well, we'll go early. And he sent me the thumbnail, and I looked at it all and I read it. Yeah, at 6 o'clock. But I never noticed on the sign that it still says that usual time of 7 p.m. So I apologize for those people that are tuning in late, and hopefully they'll tune in and be able to watch it. It won't be live, but this is what happens. It's humanity. It's just it's the way we are, is that we often go right by something and don't notice it because it's been there so long. And that's truly the situation that too many Albertans are in. We've been part of this confederation for 115 years, and people can't even start to fathom that we have a problem and we need to get out of here, that the Titanic is sinking, and it won't work to be sitting on a lifeboat on the deck when it goes down. We need to be out of here and a good distance away when things collapse, and they will collapse. Our healthcare again is on the brink of collapse. For 2 years, we've listened to our premier say we need these lockdowns. We've got to flatten the curve. We got to lock things down to protect the integrity of our healthcare system. They've spent billions of dollars, but did we increase the ICU beds? Did we increase the number of frontline workers? No, we just spent money with a dog chasing its tail. We're exhausted. We're worn out. The fear and the anxiety is rising. And fear and anxiety, what does that create? Divisiveness, hatred, anger. And all of these things are going up. It was so upsetting to listen to our prime minister last night say, many people say that this is divisive and this and that. But what I see is Canadians standing together. Well, there was a lot of nurses in Calgary and nurse supporters and frontline supporters of police and firemen that were supporting them in Calgary last week. I don't know, 5,000, 7,000 at Memorial Park. They are standing together, but it's not in support of our socialist federal government who wants to take away our freedoms, wants to tell us what we can and can't do, and most draconian of all is wants to impose that passport. And this is an incredibly slippery slope, if not, in fact, just a cliff that we're going over once this is implemented. But these are all upsetting things to me, and I know to each and every one of you. And so the question is what can we do? And so I want to encourage you to go to our website, wildrosenation.com, volunteer to hand out pamphlets, to get a lawn sign, or to donate. We need more money to buy more of these pamphlets and more lawn signs. And the other thing that I'd really like to do is to raise some money for an auto dial. I know lots of people hate them, but at 3 cents a call, it's the most effective way to reach out and tell people, are you aware of the Wild Rose Independence Party? Have you heard of Wild Rose Nation? Please go to our website and check us out if you don't think that Alberta is worth saving. But just short messages. But don't know, David, I was going to switch over here, but do we have any questions coming in tonight? And but maybe we can go to those, but this is our opportunity. We need to engage. We need to do all we can here in this next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, and try and get things excited. The other thing that we really need is we need to start raising money. We had an MLA resign up in Fort McMurray to run federally. She was successful, but we're going to have a by-election, and it's critical that we raise some good funds so that we can compete in that by-election. And we're looking forward to it. The real question is Jason Kenney going to survive this week? The knives are out. They're upset with him. He's just flip-flopping back and forth. And we know there's nothing worse than being lukewarm. You're either on our side or their side, and he's flip-flop back and forth like a typical politician, wanting to know where the polls are. And again, this is a failure of what I want to call is good, responsible, accountable government. he should be talking on the positive side of things, that, with 4.4 million, we only have 211 people in the hospitals. Again, not once have I ever heard from anything provincial that there's treatment for COVID. The emergency room doctor that I was talking and listening to last week, he just says, I couldn't live with myself to tell somebody who's feeling sick, they have been tested positive, they have COVID, and telling them, well, go home, and if your lips turn blue, come back. He's been prescribing the Peter McCullough protocol from Texas, and he says, praise God that he hasn't lost an individual yet in the 18 months. But he went down to Texas, I think it was April a year ago, to see what they were doing down there. It's incredible to me that the censorship and the oversight of government on these professionals, and not allowing doctors to practice medicine on what they're supposed to do, and to try and to look around. But all of these things are just, again, increasing the fear, increasing the anxiety, and now we have people becoming mad, and again, we've heard so much that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and again, this is very divisive, trying to turn people on one another rather than turning it on government and our healthcare management that have failed us. And that's where we need to focus, is to realize that it is government and the healthcare management and the system and the policies they've put in place that have failed us. 214 people do not justify the economic hardship that this province is putting on individuals, the pressure that they're putting on students, little kids. Talked to a mother today who, again, I'm done. I am not going to allow my child to come home from school with a soaking wet mask and getting the croup because of what they're putting him through. Parents need to have, what would I say, the authority on how their children are being treated. But anyways, we just need to get out and spread the message. Don't buy into this idea or let people say that, oh, we can't afford to split the vote. Without the Wild Rose, the NDP are forming government. We're actually providing a solution that's a win-win for everyone. We'll be able to hire more frontline workers without sending our money to Ottawa. We'll look after the lives and the industry and the businesses here in the province, and we'll be able to do that. We'll have, if again, many people are upset with me because I don't talk about reducing taxes. We'll be reducing taxes, but just under the current status of tax system that we have, it's $20 billion, $20 billion, almost, well, it used to be half of our budget. Back in 2002, it was all of our budget that we're sending to Ottawa. And we can't afford to do that and enhance our healthcare, enhance our education, enhance our senior care. And we need to collect and keep the taxes here and look after our own people, our own industry, our own education, our own healthcare system. And that's what a Wild Rose government will do. If you're in the healthcare business and you're worried about your pension, you're worried about your job because of the economic mismanagement of this government, you can be secure with a Wild Rose Independence Party government, that your jobs will be secure, that we'll be able to look after you and we'll be able to hire more. But David, do we have some questions? Do you think Chandra leaving caucus is just smoke and mirrors, or is Kenny planning something? I need to get some water. Luckily, I have a bottle here. For me, this is a last ditch attempt for Kenny to save himself. Caucus is turning against him. I understand that caucus is meeting on Wednesday again, and I think that they've actually been pushed to the point of no return for themselves. And I don't know, is it 20 MLAs or 17 MLAs that need to vote against him for a leadership review? I see a leadership review coming this November. But the scarier part of that is Jason Kenney has threatened before. If you're going to threaten my leadership, I'm going to call a snap election. So one more reason why we need people to step up and to start donating. We need people to be selling memberships. We've got to build our CA, because I wouldn't rule it out that we don't see an election here after the municipal because of the threat that's been presented to Jason and his reaction to that. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Will you protect universal health care over private? Well, I believe that we need to have funding following the service, which is universal. And whether that's going to a private clinic or a public clinic, it doesn't matter. Um, our public facilities are run very poorly. I've talked about this before about the global funding they receive. The efficiency will go up tremendously just because they're only going to get paid for services provided, not because of how many beds they have or how many employees they have or how many services they provide, but actually for providing services, much like any business that when someone comes through that door, they're a client and we need to serve them. Whereas, like I say, the worst case scenario we have is the EMTs show up with an ambulance and a sick person. They come through the door and they say, sorry, we can't take that individual yet. We don't have a bed, or we don't have enough people on staff. No, it's the job of the manager to call in people, to have enough staff that we meet and not only meet, but we exceed the needs of our patients. We should have a surplus when it comes to healthcare, not a shortage, and that will change things. But we'll have universal access for Albertans to get their free healthcare. But for me, boy, I wouldn't be afraid to allow private business to come and set up if there's a need for people to want something. I've when it comes to the eye doctor, there's a lot of private services that are provided, and there's no reason why Albertans need to leave Alberta to go get different operations for their eyes. But some are covered, some aren't. But we'll have universal health care for Albertans. So thanks for the question. Yes, just last week, I believe that the CA's got set up in Fort Mac. I'm hoping to go up there. I'm actually going up to Cold Lake tomorrow night, or Bonnyville. I'm not sure which one's first, Cold Lake, then Bonnyville. I don't think I'm going to make it up to Fort Mac, but I may this weekend, if not next week. But yes, we're up there. We're making phone calls, trying to get contacts, and we're aware and working towards getting a robust CA in Fort McMurray, Cold Lake area. Alberta has 18 months to increase capacity, space, secure PPE, staff, etc. Instead, they are letting staff go and decreasing ICU beds. Why? I say it's a complete failure on management and on our government, Laura. It's very disturbing and upsetting that they continue to say, oh my goodness, we got a problem here. We're going to shut down people. We're going to lock them up. We got to do that, when it should be just the opposite. They should have been training people all summer, especially for ICU training and emergency and how to intubate somebody. They should have been finding the equipment. And this, I don't know what you want to say, denial of the real problem has been very disturbing for me and upsetting. And you'd have to ask Premier Kenny or former Health Minister Chandra why he didn't, or Hinshaw, or our, the head of Alberta Health Services. But it just makes no sense to me, except for the fact that politicians and people in those positions of no real responsibility, they're guided by polls. And so they're more worried about what the polls are saying rather than looking and reading what's actually happening on the playing field in their hospitals or wherever it is. And good management, they see the problem coming long before it gets here. We used to have some very good plans with Lieutenant Colonel David Redmond on how to, what would I say, prepare and go through a pandemic. And those things were just thrown out. He has like his 9 steps and areas on how we deal with a pandemic. And when this one hit, it was just thrown out the window for whatever reason. I don't know whether they're nefarious or incompetence. Doesn't matter which one. Albertans are suffering, and we need a better government. From Kim. When are we going to see candidates? Don't make this like the Max Bernier show. It takes a team. Kim, the biggest struggle that political parties have is finding great candidates. For me, there's a very simple process, but if an election was called next month, it's going to be kind of the same process. But what I like to see and what I want to see is a CA grow to 500 members. I want that CA to have $5,000 in the bank from donations. They'll have a functioning board. And then when they feel that they have a candidate that they and the members are excited about, we'll open up the nomination. And we don't need more than one, but we need to have someone that the CA is excited about. That individual then will go through a background check with the provincial board, and then we'll give the go-ahead to actually nominate somebody. But the trigger is go out, go door to door, drop off these pamphlets, grow the CA, get 500 members. When you get to 500 members, there's enough success there that I think some very credible candidates will be working and helping to get to those 500 members. And then you, the members of that CA, will elect somebody who's going to represent you, not me or the party. We want free thinkers, and we will have free votes in the legislature, and we will have recall, and that those individuals will not be governed or controlled by a party whip. We'll have a party coordinator so that we know how people are voting on bills and legislation. And again, if they're not representing their people, I expect the people to recall them and fire them, something that we're not able to do right now, but certainly need to. But I hope that answers your question. We need to grow the CAs, and then you guys need to find your nominated candidates. That's your job. I'm happy to assist and try and direct people in that way, but it's happening in each CA. But that's our big challenge right now. And as I've said before in another broadcast, I surely hope that we can have 4 or 5 nominated by the end of the year. How do I buy a membership for Wild Rose? Well, thanks, Marge. You go to wildrosenation.com and click on the join. There's now 3 buttons. You can join, you can donate, or you can subscribe to our newsletter, because some people don't want to be members, but they want to participate and help. There's a volunteer button farther down, but please go and join, and let's get involved. Let's roll up our sleeves and let's save Alberta. I'm sorry, D. What is a CA? I keep saying that. We have 87 MLAs in the province. Provincially, it's broken up into 87 regions, and those are called constituency associations. And those of us, you pick up acronyms in whatever business you're doing, we call it CA because constituency associations is such a long word. But that's what we have, 87 in the province. And everybody belongs inside or is in the area of a constituency association. So thanks for that question. And again, it is frustrating for new people who come on, and there's a lot of people now realizing that, wow, I need to get involved because the status quo is unacceptable, and the easiest way to change this is to change government. And so let's keep doing that and sharing the word. David, what is the plan to get a referendum going and put it to Alberta? The question being clear and precise, do you want to separate from Canadian Union and form a new country called Alberta? Well, thank you, David. First, we have to do is get elected, because Jason Kenney will not put a referendum, let alone do anything to protect Alberta with the firewall, or what I call the firewall plus. And so what we need to do first is form a government. We will then claim our autonomy from Ottawa by electing a Wild Rose independent government. We basically have 6 things that we will immediately initiate. Number 1, we'll be creating our own police force and having a patch over. We'll be looking at our own judicial system rather than the legal system that we currently have, and the federal the federal courts saying that they have jurisdiction over our constitutional rights to develop our resources. So police force, and the judicial system that goes along with that. We need to collect our own taxes. An Alberta Revenue Agency, Albertans working here to collect the taxes here. We need to have our own pension plan. That doesn't mean that Albertans will lose their Canadian pension plan, but we'll have a new enhanced Alberta pension plan that people can either transfer over or possibly be part of too. We need to have our own employment insurance. We need to have our own immigration policies that's looking after Alberta's needs, families and businesses. And then the most important one that again, with our new Prime Minister being re-elected and saying he wants to act on climate, is our own, we'll be governed by our own Environmental Act. And we will not be allowing the hypocrites from out east buying Saudi oil or blood oil from other jurisdictions, but saying that ours is dirty. But those are the 6 steps. How Ottawa responds to that will directly relate to how fast we're then able to have a referendum. Right now, the numbers say only 30% of people, and maybe that went up a lot last night. But we need to have our autonomy and everything in order before we have that referendum. And whether that's 6 months after we form government or maybe at the longest up to 2 years, but in that time we'll be exercising our own full autonomy and will not be having Ottawa control our lives. But we need to have a successful referendum. Unlike Quebec, if we fail on our referendum, we lose everything. We'll become a have-not province. Quebec has the benefit when they fail, they get the winnings. They get pampered. They get all these extra things that Ottawa wants to buy their votes from them, whereas Alberta will become a have-not province. But I hope that answers your question. We will have a successful referendum for Albertans to have a clear question just as soon as we reach that threshold that Albertans are realizing the benefit of independence and the necessity of being a sovereign nation, because the Canadian Titanic is sinking and we do not want to be part of it. We can't afford to be part of it. If there's a non-confidence and they call a snap election, are we ready? Well, it's one of those things where we're never as ready as we want to be, and it's why we need to get to work now. Is that we need to be as ready as possible. We need more donations into the bank. We need our memberships to grow in our constituency associations, and we need for people that are interested in serving to step up and to be a big part of growing that membership to 500, so that we will be ready. And again, it's always interesting when a crisis hits, which an election would be, is how Albertans respond. And because of the federal election, there's a lot of individuals that have participated in that would switch and shift over and be part of the provincial one to save our province. They tried to save Canada, and they're ready and willing to roll up their sleeves and want to save Alberta. How many CAs are set up now for Wild Rose? I believe it's between 45 and 50, Laura, but I don't keep track of that the way I should. But
Paul,
yes.
I actually asked someone about that a minute ago, and yes, it's about 50.
Okay, thank you. So we have 37 more to go. Are we getting to the end, David, with questions? I just want to say to everybody that, that there's always a silver lining. When it gets darkest, that's the moment when the light starts to shine at the end of the tunnel, or the next new day is dawning. And I really do feel, and again, it's always been one of my favorite political quotes, is by our first social credit premier, William Aberhart. And he basically said, if the people haven't suffered enough, it's their God-given right to suffer more. And unfortunately, human nature is such that we stay in our comfort zone a long time. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable it is. We feel safer there than venturing out and going into new area. And again, there's 25-30% of Albertans that have already realized that the temperature of distaste that Ottawa has for us in our industry is immense, and we need to separate. There's too many at this point who don't realize the situation we're in. I don't even think they realize what impact Trudeau's just transition will do for our economy, for our oil and gas industry, and for Canada as a whole. But our job is to wake people up, to actually um, have them realize the dire situation that we're in, and this river of life that we're floating down. And if we don't get the paddles out and get to shore, I just see very bleak results here in 2 or 3 years if we fail to form government in 2023. And so it's exciting in the fact that we actually have solutions. It's hard to believe that we've got ourselves in this situation, but we're in a dysfunctional, broken, toxic relationship with Canada. There's no fixing this. Again, David, let's put up that chart again that shows 199 to 62. This is the situation that we're in. Quebec and Ontario, 199 seats. The Prairies, 62 seats. When we add the BC to that, we go to 102, I believe, or 104 seats. 200 to 104. What Alberta needs, what Canada needs, is a constitutional democracy that recognizes the supremacy of God and the rule of law. What we have is a divisive constitution that allows tyranny of the majority. Though those 200, and then again you can add on Eastern Canada and their votes, basically get to vote and to rob us, to plunder the West, to restrict our actions on what we get to do. And there's nothing that we can do inside of a sovereign Canada because we're just a minority, and tyranny of the minority is allowed underneath our constitution. They're supposed to demonstrably justify it. I was at a function this week with over 600 people that attended, and the constitutional lawyer talked about the Constitution and says that when you take someone's rights, the Supreme Courts are looking at that there needs to be proportional benefit. And I argued with him after, or didn't really argue, we went up and discussed it. And I said, come on, our Constitution very much says it's not proportional, it's demonstrably justified. If we're going to put one person's life at risk or take somebody's property or shut down a business, whether that's a gym or whether it's a barber shop or a hairdresser, it needs to be demonstrably justified. That means overwhelming evidence on why we need to do this. And I can tell you that if you're shutting down a barber shop that's going to have 10 people come in through the day, but you let Costco or Walmart or the Superstore or Safeway or Sobeys or whatever have hundreds and thousands of people go through a day, I'm sorry, you cannot demonstrably justify that there is a risk of a one-on-one contact. And don't give me this malarkey that, oh, you're around this individual for 15 minutes. Even if you are, it's easy to trace back. Again, one of the problems that we're having here is this idea that that the asymptomatic person is causing the spread. There's no question in the 2 or 3 cases that I'm familiar with in my area here is that these are individuals who are double vaccinated. They figured that, oh, I can't have COVID. So they're out and about and going around and spreading it. And they says, well, I didn't have any idea that the government and healthcare is not doing a good job of educating people. If you're not feeling well, you need to stay home. That's always been the process, and it needs to be emphasized now more than ever. But currently, we have a failure of leadership. We have a failure of our healthcare system to address the problems and to allow people, professional people, to exercise their, I want to say, professionalism in treating individuals. we've got this problem of treating the masses. It's not about isolating the sick person. Oh, let's isolate everybody. Then we can't be blamed for letting this out. There's three things that people, in my opinion, need to be. Number one, we're personally responsible for our personal welfare or well-being. Number two, we're personally responsible for our health, whether we go out exercising, whether we're judicial on and picking good food items. And again, in today's world, and I'm certainly guilty of this, is that we have such an abundance that overeating is easy, and many of us are weighing more than we should. And you can say, well, is that a burden on the healthcare system? But this picking and choosing is wrong. This divisiveness is wrong. And the third one is our right to defend ourselves. And all of these are being stripped away from us, from our provincial and federal governments. And we need to stand up and say no. I thank each and every one of you for the work that you're doing. I believe that we've been the freest province out there because of the polls, that 20% of you have said that, you're supporting the wild rose. You're fighting for freedom. You're fighting for independence. And that's held Jason back, and he hasn't had the draconian policies that other premiers have had, but yet his have caused a lot of damage. And again, it was brought up the other night that there's been several reports that the damages, the consequences of the lockdowns have been 10 times greater than what we've prevented. And that's unacceptable. It's not demonstrably justified. So please go to the website, donate if you can afford to donate. Please sign up if you're willing to go and drop off our brochures door to door. There's a very simple, this is good cardboard. And so you just go up to the door and you can literally slide it in, and it'll sit there. We need to get our message out, and the more of us that do it, the quicker the message can get up, and the faster our freedoms can be protected, if not restored. But thank you. God bless each and every one of you. And I look forward to meeting you as I continue to travel the province and meet individuals and deliver the brochures and the lawn signs. So take care, and we'll talk again soon.